Palobo on the drum. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
This special meeting of the Board of School Directors will come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Peterson, we are still completing the login.
Just practicing.
Excellent work, President Peterson.
Thank you.
We are on.
This special meeting of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Carr,
Here.
Director Garcia,
Present.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Present.
Director Herndon,
Present.
Director Leonard,
Present.
Director O'Halloran,
Present.
Director Simpson,
Present.
Director Taylor,
Present.
and President Peterson.
Present.
We have 9 present.
Will the secretary please read the call of the meeting?
At the request of President Robert E. Peterson, a special meeting of the Board of School Directors will be held at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, June 1st, 2021, on the following item of business. Item number 1, action on the MPS Road to Readiness Plan to return to in-person learning for the 2021-22 school year. MPS buildings are closed to the public due to ongoing public health concerns related to the COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting will be held virtually. However, members of the board are present and are joining the meeting from the Central Services Building. Testimony will be taken during the meeting. Those who wish to speak must register in advance to receive a participation code in order to speak and be on the platform. The deadline to register was 3 p.m. today, June 1st, 2021. Written comments may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance by mail at 5225 West Village Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, by email to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us, or by fax to 414-475-8071. Public comments received before 3 p.m. on June 1st, 2021 will and have been forwarded to the board for its consideration. The meeting is also being broadcast on WYMS Radio 88.9 FM or on Time Warner Spectrum Channel 13 and via live stream on the MPS YouTube stream channel.
Thank you. The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. The chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the recitation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding the interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Bienvenidos. Esta junta se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo requieran. Si usted desea escuchar esta junta en español, por favor marque el teléfono 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de la junta 608-130-5362. La repito, para acceder a esta junta en español, marque al teléfono 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de la junta 608-130-5362. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. For each of the items of business, we will hold a discussion and a public hearing. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items are required to register in advance. I ask those who are waiting to speak to remain on the platform until they are called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Orders dictates that all comments should be given to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed towards the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation of any kind, including inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behavior from that platform. Those who are removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony may be submitted to the Office of Board Governments, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items attached online, you may do so by visiting ESB Milwaukee K12.wi.us. Now let's begin, Madam Secretary. Item 1.
Item 1 is action on the MPS Roadmap to Readiness Plan to return to in-person learning for the 2021-22 school year. The recommendation is that the board approve returning to in-person learning for the 21-22 school year as detailed in the Roadmap to Readiness Plan as attached to this item.
Very well. Will the administration please present the item?
Yes. Good evening, President Peterson, members of the board, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you for scheduling this meeting dedicated to discuss the roadmap to readiness as it relates to in-person learning for students in Milwaukee Public Schools for the 2021-2022 school year. After extensive research and consideration by the administration and the 6 work groups, the recommendation is to return to full in-person learning for the 2021-2022 school year. We want to meet the needs and comfort level of all of our families and will therefore offer a standalone virtual option. This evening presentation include a look at where we have been, where we are, and where we hope to go in terms of what is best for our students, pending your approval this evening. There are many things we can be proud of for the 2020-21 school year, and we also learned some important lessons that will serve to inform our efforts relative to the 2021-2022 school year. We are confident in our recommendation to return to full in-person learning and our ability to keep our staff and students safe by following current CDC guidelines and making changes as it is updated. I would like to thank the board and the many individuals who supported our schools and our students during this unprecedented time experienced during the 2020-2021 school year. Thank you to the staff, to the community, and the six work groups that guided our planning and visioning to ensure the health and safety of all. At this time, I would like to turn attentions to our presentation for this evening, and afterwards, we'll be happy to respond to any questions that you may have. Okay, good. Go ahead to the next slide. As you can see, all of our work starts with the 5 priorities for success, and the 5 priorities of success is there. And everything that we do is centered around the 5 priorities for success. Janelle?
Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. My name is Janelle Hawkins, Senior Director of the Citywide Region. Tonight, the team and I will walk you through our plan to return to full in-person learning for the 2021-22 school year. The agenda for tonight is as follows. We'll go over some background information. We'll definitely talk about our points of pride and our lessons learned. We'll talk about exactly what that transition to full in-person learning will look like. Definitely want to thank our work groups, as Dr. Posley mentioned, and really start talking about what is our instructional agenda and what can we expect next school year. As we move forward, this next slide is just a reminder for us to share exactly what occurred in each of the phases. As you all remember, phase one was the entire district utilizing a fully virtual instructional model. This model included synchronous and asynchronous learning. Synchronous time, as you remember, was that FaceTime with your classroom teacher. And asynchronous time was used to support individual student needs, such as cooperative learning, office hours, and any additional support that students and families may need. This model was new and exciting for all involved. And the next few slides will share many highlights from that non-traditional start of the school year. In April, we moved to phase two, which was the hybrid and virtual, which was both hybrid, virtual and in-person learning. This model helped us to begin to think differently about how we differentiate instruction and, of course, how to teach concurrently. Students followed their schedules on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Friday. On Wednesday, they participated in synchronous instruction in the morning, and teachers were providing asynchronous work for the rest of the day. As I mentioned earlier, there are a few items during this pandemic that we're most proud of. This next slide speaks to the data that helped us land on these following points of pride. And please excuse me for reading to you, but I do want to highlight many of the things that we were able to accomplish. For example, every student in Milwaukee Public Schools was issued a Chromebook to engage in remote learning throughout the school year. 14,000 active Google Classrooms were held each week. 13,000 Wi-Fi hotspots provided to students to bridge virtual learning. 1,677 applications collected for kindergarten enrollment, and 756 registered guests for the two events. 119 safe operations, CLC and safe places were held. 4,666 students for those working families. 1,773,964 meals provided to children and the community members at 50 stop, grab, and go sites from July to April. 7,091 HEPA filtration units delivered for every classroom and shared space in the district. In addition, over 80,000 plexi barriers, 250,000 plus N95, 200,000 face shields, and 9,000 gowns were delivered. Other points of pride during phase one and phase two include 3 sites open to ensure IEP and 504 safeguards were in place for all students. Virtual parent conferences and IEP meetings held and had increased numbers of participation. Organized and implemented 2 student leadership summits, all virtual. Students in need have benefited from various tutoring opportunities, successful continuation of the expansion of visual arts and music programs, and held in person as well as virtual completion and graduation ceremonies. Other points of pride that we'll mention during phase one and phase two, MPS sites. We created a district COVID-19 dashboard for all stakeholders to view what was going on with COVID-19. MPS sites were used for student, staff, and community for vaccination clinics. Developed a hotline to ensure health and safety practices were routine, and contact tracing systems created for students and staff safety. There were also many lessons learned. As a district, there are opportunities for us to consult with the Council of Great City Schools, as well as many of our surrounding districts about how best to service and serve the students through the midst of a pandemic. Some of the lessons learned, constituents were concerned about the constraints of 3 cases in closing the school, concerns with surveillance testing from parents and staff. Constituents looked for district guidelines that follow public health guidance. Building positive school communities were critical for success, and concerns, of course, with concurrent teaching. As a school district, we propose for the 2021-22 school year, full in-person learning. We know that face-to-face learning is what our students and families need and desire to get back to some sense of normalcy. We are focused on regaining unfinished learning by placing an emphasis on best practices, setting the stage for what is to occur, acknowledging any barriers, and providing communication for all stakeholders to effectively transition back to school to shift our focus to improve student achievement. Full in-person begins for Early Start on August 16th for students, and the first teacher day for Early Start is August 9th. Full in-person begins for our traditional start on September 2nd for students, and August 26th is the first work day for teachers in the traditional setting. It is time to put the pieces together for a safe return to in-person learning. In-person learning will include 5 full days of teaching and learning. We will work collaboratively to recalibrate our expectations around student engagement. It is our hope to use many of the lessons learned during this pandemic to continually improve instruction for all kids in Milwaukee Public Schools. We've talked a lot about lessons learned, and one important takeaway for us as a district was listening to our constituents. Many students and families informed us that a virtual environment was a great fit for their daily learning format. As we transition back to face-to-face learning, it is important to recognize that many students prefer online learning and are seeking a virtual program option. As a district, our implementation for the fall of 2021 is a standalone K-12 virtual program. The program will be housed at the Green Bay Avenue School, which also houses the Success Center. Students will have a secondary enrollment to the virtual program and will remain attached to their school of origin in Infinite Campus. We will continue to explore the future of full virtual schools. At this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Carletta Nolan, who will walk us through the health and safety and some of our academic components. Dr. Nolan?
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. President Peterson and members of the board, I am Dr. Carletta Nolan, Regional Superintendent for the Central Region. The work of the Health and Safety Team continues to be guided by the CDC. On May 15th, 2021, new operational strategies for K-12 schools were released. This document advises that schools provide in-person instruction should prioritize 2 prevention strategies. 1, universal and correct use of masks, and 2, physical distancing to the greatest extent possible. These 2 priority areas are reflected in the plan put forward this evening. For the fall reopening, masks will be required for all students, teachers, and staff throughout the school, except while eating or drinking. Masks will also continue to be required on buses. However, masks will not be required while outside, including recess, gym classes, and sports practices that will occur outside. Isolation rooms will continue to support safe practices for students or staff that present COVID-19 symptoms while in the building. As our COVID coordinators, building leaders will continue to facilitate the staffing of the isolation rooms to present possible spread and document any possible cases that result. Related to physical distancing, the current CDC guidance is 3 feet in the school setting. To maximize distancing, we will recommend removing non-essential furniture from classrooms and using configurations of furniture that maximize distance between students. Because class sizes vary considerably from school to school, using the 3 feet guidance rather than a set number of students will allow us to safely serve all students in person. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Sean Kane, who will walk you through slides 14 and 15. Mr. Kane? Oh, I'm sorry. I will do 14. So working with the Milwaukee Health Department, contract tracing will support our efforts to minimize exposure in schools and control case numbers in the fall. Requirements to quarantine will be determined on an individual basis, taking into consideration vaccine status of each person. When positive cases are indicated in a school or district site, affected individuals will be identified by the definition of close contact. When determined a possible outbreak at a school site, that will result in flexible scheduling. We will use a 3% threshold of a school's population to determine when there is a need to move to flexible scheduling. Now I will turn it over to Mr. Sean Kane, who will walk you through slides 15 and 16.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan, and good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. My name is Sean Kane, and I'm the Interim Director of Facilities and Maintenance Services. I'll be discussing the next two slides about air quality. Department of Facilities and Maintenance Services, DFMS, is following CDC and ASHRAE guidelines by maximizing supply air in buildings by having the supply air distributed 2 hours before and 2 hours after the building is occupied. DFMS has in the past and continues to address deferred maintenance items surrounding air quality. In order to achieve a ventilation audit, MPS is hiring design consultants to check DFMS archives, review mechanical drawings, confirm square footages for occupied spaces, perform site investigations, then create engineering data sheets, which is also known as EDS, for design packages that can be bid out to contractors. Awarded contractors performing testing and balancing, also known as TAB, of the mechanical system, then compile reports that are submitted to the consultant and DFMS for review. Minor repairs are made to upgrade the mechanical system. Also, if recommended by the consultant, DFMS upgrades the filtration system. Sometimes the remediation effort requires the scope to become a capital project for the deferred maintenance program. The next slide, the expectation is to have the EDS completed by the end of the calendar year and the contractor to complete the testing and balancing for the next couple of years. As EDS design packages are completed, DFMS wants to onboard contractors right away. If there are any remediation efforts needed, DFMS is attempting to get these capital projects completed within the next 3 years. In order to expedite the process, DFMS is procuring an integrated project delivery, IPD contractor, to assist DFMS by developing an overall timeline, project planning, and implementing construction projects. DFMS anticipates these services with the IDP for the next 3 years. DFMS is finalizing the request for proposal this week to solicit bids during the month of June. After evaluating the submitted proposals, DFMS will have a diverse team of professionals to provide recommendations to submit for board approval in July. That's what I have for the air quality slides, and now I'll turn it back over to Dr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. President Peterson, members of the board, I am Carletta Nolan, Regional Superintendent for the Central Region. As we open in the fall, the standard of care for health and safety will remain a priority. You can expect continued consistent messaging and communication with staff and families, documentation and monitoring of COVID-19 cases through the established system for gathering and dashboard reporting, plexiglass barriers, continued use of health breath filters, additional cleaning staff in each building, restrooms inspected and maintained with needed supplies, and additional summer cleaning in all schools. As we transition back to the classroom full-time in the fall, you can expect to see the continued use of Google Classroom and other digital platforms used to support instruction. In addition, there will be a clear focus on academic acceleration that is grounded in instructional best practices, allowing for in-person teaching while maintaining physical distancing. Throughout the summer, school teams will work to develop school improvement plans and, in collaboration with district teams, will participate in creating vertically articulated, standards-aligned units of study that emphasize prioritized learning. This fall, students and teachers will have an opportunity to experience new, high-quality instructional materials and resources to support standards-aligned instruction in reading and science. Beginning in July, several professional development opportunities are being provided for teachers to become familiar with the use of these materials. Teachers will be able to register for these courses through the LMS. Slides 20 and 21 represent the calendar of events for opening week, early start and traditional start respectively. During opening week, there will be a balance between district-supported and school-specific professional development. During phase 3, professional development will continue, next slide, will continue to address capacity building to support educators to impact student learning with the focus being school culture, really developing the processes and procedures for the Essential 8, arrival, breakfast, morning meetings, transitions, lunch, dismissal, celebration of learning, and school-wide discipline. You also see emphasis on formative assessments, which are to provoke students' learning and provide both teachers and students feedback to impact teaching and learning. And then a menu of learning opportunities for staff that will occur in various formats, virtual, in-person, synchronous, asynchronous, for professional development. The menu of offerings will be designed and prioritized as a result of the lessons learned from phase 1 and phase 2, recommendations from the professional development work group, and the results collected from the staff self-assessment professional development survey. In an effort to ensure parents and families are aware of the fall reopening plan, communications about what to expect during the 2021-22 school year will begin to be sent out this month, June 2021. We understand the need for transparency and want parents to make informed decisions about school as early as possible. During phase 1 and 2, we learned that it was convenient for parents to attend specific school events virtually. Many of those events saw an increase in the number of parents who participated. Therefore, during the fall reopening, parents and families will have the option to attend IEP meetings and parent meetings and parent-teacher conferences virtually. We will continue to house parent resources and information about school reopening on the MPS reopening website. These resources will continue to be offered in multiple languages so that our diverse family populations can access them. At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Eduardo Galvan, who will walk you through classroom support. Mr. Galvan?
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Good evening, President Peterson, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, Regional Superintendent for the Southwest Region. Classroom and school-wide supports will continue to be a critical part of our plans to reopen in the fall. We understand that all our school community has been through a lot during the pandemic. Many students and families and staff have experienced trauma during that time, along with issues related to social unrest. We understand that many of our community members have not been in a brick and mortar school for an extended period of time, and that the prospect of a return in the fall may cause anxiety, excitement, and other emotions. We understand that our communities will need support to best be able to engage their education. Social emotional learning and mental health of students and staff will be an important factor to address as we prepare for a successful return to school in the fall. To address that need, there will be support provided for school communities as pointed out on this slide. For new staff and students, schools will conduct informational meetings and opportunities to meet new staff and students. There will be opportunities to give tours virtually, go over school policies and procedures prior to the first day of classes, and to identify which social and emotional supports are available for students and staff. The timelines are listed for this to occur at the early start and traditional start schools. In addition, staff training will be provided in the area of social emotional learning. School staff will be provided resources and expectations to ensure that SEL and mental health supports are available and used as part of core instruction. That core instruction will include lessons on establishing community and processing emotions. Recognizing the need to provide support before the start of the school year, there will be resources provided periodically over the summer. These resources will be focused on helping students prepare for a return to school in the fall. School support staff will continue to provide support as they have during the entire pandemic. School social workers, school counselors, psychologists, and social and emotional learning teachers will be an additional support by providing lessons and guidance for students and staff. Cell lessons and services will be part of daily instruction to meet the needs of students. As was provided during phase 1 and 2, lessons for the first 6 weeks will be specifically outlined as a resource for staff to use with students. Support for struggling learners will continue throughout the remainder of the school year and into summer through Summer Academy and then in the fall. Bus drivers will continue to instruct students to wear masks on buses and sit in assigned seats that are safely and physically distanced according to the CDC and Milwaukee Health Department guidance. There will be intense efforts to attract and retain bus drivers for the fall as we prepare for all students whose families choose to return. There will continue to be collaboration between Transportation Department and schools to establish safe entry and departure procedures. To enhance educational experiences for students and families, all 21st century CLC programs, selected safe spaces, and child care camp will commence at existing locations on the first day of student attendance. Intensive effort is underway to attract adequate staffing for those sites that did not yet open. In order to maintain health and safety protocols, there will be an online registration for all fall sports. PPE will be provided to all coaches and all athletic equipment will be cleaned and ready to go. There will be safety protocols set in place for spectators. Live streaming of athletic events will be instituted to accommodate families and interested parties. Summer opportunities will be available to coaches and athletes to get together prior to the start of their season in accordance with WIAA guidelines. There will be 14 Summer Academy sites available for students, 2 high school sites, and 12 elementary sites across the city to support students. You see those dates listed there for middle and high school, elementary, and summer enrichment camp and credit recovery for the different age groups that we serve in our district. Grab and go, breakfast and lunch will continue. A pilot meal delivery service is planned for the 53205, 53206, and 53233 zip codes. Meals will be pre-packed and families can pre-order meals for delivery. Families will meet drivers at the curb to receive their meals. Meals will also be available at the 14 summer school locations, 34 CLC and 22 campsites, and 5 Twilight Centers for students who are participating at those locations. All staff will report to work in person at the start of the 2021-22 school year. All current approved remote plans will sunset at the end of this academic school year. Remote work accommodation based on the pandemic will not be offered moving forward. At this time and continually, Human Resources is aggressively recruiting for the upcoming school year. Listed are some job fairs on the 23rd and 26th for all positions certified and classified, and others are being planned throughout the summer. Each school will create a summer enrollment plan and host a summer open house. We will also have Student Services will lead our enrollment efforts by soliciting additional recruiters to help support this work. All community recruiters are current Milwaukee Public School employees who already have extensive knowledge of our district schools, programs, and enrollment procedures. This year, recruiting efforts will take place virtually and community-based. We have identified a district-based call center that will allow our recruiters to contact potential new MPS families by phone and email. The district is taking aggressive steps to reach out to families by training language interpreters on the district's enrollment processes and information as well. As I mentioned, each school will also have a summer enrollment plan and host a summer open house. Communications is an area where we had much feedback that it was very much needed. The district will supply messaging in June and July to all stakeholders, develop plans to distribute press release and engage press for media coverage about the school return for fall 2021. Use all district outreach tools, emails, letters, social media, etc., and advertisements on TV, radio, bus, and billboards to help carry back to school and school enrollment messages to our entire community. Ensure communication materials are translated into families' languages of preference and gain feedback from students' families and create communications and materials for the fall. Again, communications in August and September will be there to welcome and celebrate the start of the 2021-22 school year. Continue to give students, families, and staff up-to-date information about the district's fall back-to-school plan. Ensure that students, families, and staff can access key information. Promotion of Welcome Back to School Week, which is a tradition in MPS. Celebrate the first day of school for early start and traditional schools. In addition, individual school sites will also communicate through their school media sites, emails, and traditional mail with school-specific information. At this time, I will turn it back to our superintendent, Dr. Posen. President Peterson, members of the board, one of the things I will say is that on the last slide that you will see there are all of the 6 groups that have been working along with us. And I want to take this opportunity to thank those who presented this evening and all those individuals who contributed to providing support during this unprecedented time. And at this time, we're prepared to respond to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to board members and questions, I would like, if there's no objection, to hear from the public. I see no objections. So, Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. The first speaker that we have registered on the platform is Deshauna Bailey. I'm sorry, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Okay, that speaker is not on the platform. The next speaker we have on the platform is Kenneth Locke. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Yes, my name is Kenneth Locke, last name L-O-C-K.
Thank you. Please begin.
Yes, I'm just speaking more so from the place of just really understanding that the community needs this re-engagement. Just being a pastor here in the inner city and being focused on really bringing the youth back together. We were inside of Vincent High School using the auditorium for church and so and for our tutoring program. So there's just so many young men that we were reaching that it's kind of hard to reach just virtually. Zoom has worked or started off working, but of course we're dealing with teenagers. Just as you continue to go, it's really, really hard to keep teenage men engaged via Zoom or virtual learning, or just even to be held accountable. And so that's one of the things that I definitely want to speak on as far as from the community, that it really would be healthy socially to get the kids back engaged into in-person learning. So I wanted to speak personally on that, and also to ask if there were any statements about it when the board would consider outside organizations like mentoring programs to be able to have access to the buildings again to re-engage with the kids, because those were our primary meeting quarters. So that's my statement.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have on the platform to speak on this item is Gretchen Kapperman. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Gretchen Kapperman, Kapperman.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Peterson and members of the school board. As a white teacher of blind and visually impaired students in MPS, I'm speaking against taking any action on the roadmap to readiness proposal until we hear a plan to address 4 critical areas: outreach to families, surveying the mental health needs of students and staff, providing paid SEL training, and most importantly, centering racial equity. Milwaukee Public Schools must make a plan to contact families who have not been reached in the 18 months of pandemic schooling. How will we contact our most vulnerable families, some of whom may only have a government-issued cell phone and no internet? MPS must immediately create a survey to measure the mental health needs of students and staff. As we are getting ready for an in-person school year, we are also handling post-pandemic life, racial justice reckoning, and increase in community violence. MPS must hold paid SEL training this summer, in addition to curriculum training. It must be culturally reflective and help identify biases that might lead to disproportionate classroom discipline. If we want accelerated academics and ambitious instruction after a pandemic, we must also target interventions based on each student's individual needs. Finally, and most importantly, we need racial equity at the center of this work. The equity guidance document must be brought to the PACE committee for review to be ready for the 2021-2022 school year. Traditional schooling has failed our Black students pre-pandemic. We must not return to normal. This is our opportunity to reflect, reset, and truly take our Black students' needs into consideration as we plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Angela Harris. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, Angela Harris, Harris. I am a first grade teacher at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School, chairwoman of the Black Educators Caucus. Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. I'm speaking against taking any action on the Roadmap to Readiness Plan as presented tonight until the following items are addressed. 1, a communication plan for families and students that we've been unable to reach at any time during the last 18 months. Lack of access to internet, being transient, and having government-issued cell phones with limited minutes are all realities for some of our families. Where are the lessons learned from the communication failures in phase 1 and phase 2? Number 2, a mental health survey be sent prior to the 2021-22 school year logistics communication being sent out in June. Students and staff have dealt with a pandemic, a racial justice reckoning, and now an increase of violence and reckless driving in our community. As we all prepare for a fully in-person school year next year, we need to ensure that all mental health needs can be addressed and supported. Third, in addition to paid curriculum training this summer, SEL training should also be offered with a focus on cultural relevancy and helping staff identify biases that can lead to disproportionate discipline practices post-pandemic. Fourth, if ambitious instruction with a clear focus on acceleration is the goal, school administrators should be given the option to allow looping next year for our best chance at improving students' academic outcomes. Finally, prior to any more work happening regarding the Roadmap to Readiness Plan, the Equity Guidebook needs to be brought to the June 8th PACE committee meeting. This work cannot and should not be happening without racial equity at the center. The last year and a half should have yielded more than a slide with 5 bullet points of lessons learned. We need to get real about the lessons learned for our students and families because our students and families are owed it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Amy Mizialko. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Amy Mizialko, Mizialko, Director Peterson and Superintendent Posley. I'm speaking to you tonight on the proposed reopening PowerPoint that administration has put forward. The MTEA is asking that the MPS administration meet and confer with MTEA on all items in the reopening plan for the 2021-2022 school year. I want to speak to you about a few of the items in particular. The MTEA surveyed our over 5,000 members, and a top line repeated urgent issue that came through from teachers was the issue of concurrent teaching. People were somehow able to really struggle through 8 weeks or so of concurrent teaching. That is not a practice that can be resumed in August, and not a practice that can be resumed in any way next school year. Want to also bring your attention to testing. With the understanding that significant numbers of our students will return in fall having not had access to the vaccine, it's important that we establish testing where it matters most. That includes having tests available for symptomatic students that arrive to our schools in real time, having tests available for students with COVID-19 positive family members, as well as testing MPS student athletes. MPS is looking for more information on the MPS air quality upgrade plan. Want to bring to your attention that the district made a very smart investment in over 7,000 HEPA air filters. And our students and public education workers needed and deserved HEPA air filters in their classrooms before there was a pandemic. Making sure that we have filters to replace to take care of students. We have a very high incidence rate of asthma is important. And I'll end with saying that incentivizing vaccination is an opportunity that this board and administration should not miss. The board should pass a $500 bonus to incentivize.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Ingrid Walker Henry. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Ingrid Walker Henry, WALKER-HENRY.
Thank you.
I am the Vice President of the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association. This evening, I am asking that the board and administration, in addition to a PowerPoint, provide MTA members details around the following items. We need a clear PPE plan that includes mask usage and enforcement for students, families, and staff with agreements in place. There needs to be a continued supply of N95 and KN95 and a higher quantity of PPE provided for healthcare workers in schools. There needs to be criteria for classrooms or schools experiencing COVID-19 spikes or outbreaks with the idea that they need to return to virtual. Building cleanliness continues to be a need that is to be prioritized. This means an increase in hours for current MPS building service staff. And as MPS works to stabilize its workforce, that means prioritizing the hours building service helpers receive and phasing out third-party subcontractors. There needs to be a transportation plan that phases in a return to normal capacity and is developed with factors like case rate and disease burden in mind. Medical accommodations and leave needs a plan to improve processing of these requests. And finally, there must be a schedule of regular public reopening reports to the school board with transparent and accurate reporting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Raven Chappelle. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
APPELLE.
Thank you.
President Peterson, members of the board, my name is Ray Chappelle. I'm a white educator at Allen Field and a member of the Anti-Racist White Educators, or ROE Milwaukee. I'll start by simply stating that it is a shame that this special board meeting is taking place for the first time today, months after the first scholars walked into our buildings back in April. I'm sure students stranded on bus stops waiting for buses that never came, teachers overwhelmed by the lack of adequate preparation for concurrent teaching, and parents frustrated by the insufficient communication handed down from central office, all had valuable input and deserved to be heard well before the second to last week of school. I'm speaking against taking any action on the roadmap to readiness plan until we are truly prepared to not only address, but to do something about the inequities that existed prior to the pandemic. Student-led groups like Leaders Igniting Transformation, or LIT, have been calling for a meaningful investment in the mental health of our scholars for years now. Where is that reassurance in this so-called plan? Hiring more mental health professionals is needed now more than ever, while our students and our staff continue to live through both the pandemic of COVID-19 and the pandemic of white supremacy. Where is our district's commitment to mandated ongoing anti-racist trainings for all staff in this plan? We might be fairly certain that our students will be safe from this deadly virus in their schools next fall, but how certain are we that educators will not participate in the spirit murdering of our Black and brown scholars? How certain are we that school administrators will not continue to feed the school to prison pipeline? Every time I hear someone say that they're ready to get back to normal, I think, what was normal to so many of our students? Normal was violent, normal was broken, normal was not our best. So how can we promise students, parents, and community members that MPS will come back stronger in the fall? Board members, this is your task. Please keep anti-racism and racial equity at the center of your decisions tonight. If we fail to address the issues that existed prior to the pandemic, we cannot claim to be on our way anywhere but backwards, and we certainly cannot claim to be on our way to success. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that was the last speaker that we actually have on the platform to speak on this item. We have also received 11 pieces of written testimony regarding information and support for the school reopening plan.
Thank you. Now it's time for board questions. And I want to go through the board one by one. You can ask the question, ask a follow-up. When all other board members are have spoken, I'm going to ask Sequana Taylor to take the gavel, and I'd like to present a motion at that time, and we can then continue conversation. So I'll start with Director Carr. Do you have any questions for the administration?
Yes. So foremost, thank you to Dr. Posley, Superintendent Posley, I'm sorry, and the administration. I think, these times have not been easy for any of us. This pandemic caught all of us by surprise, and there was no, roadmap for readiness for how to deal or operate in a pandemic. So I applaud you all for the plan, and I really appreciate the lessons learned and the opportunities that were developed from it. One of the things I will say, when I read the proposed plan, I was left craving more, and by that I mean there were many missed opportunities that failed to capture the other lessons learned from this. One of the things I think about as I'm reading the plan is what does the K through 12 re-engagement experience look like, and a more detailed analysis of that. Is there any opportunity to perhaps develop an extended school year calendar to possibly make up for the critical academic losses? And if not, what's the plan for getting students who were behind pre-COVID pandemic and have fallen further behind during the pandemic caught up? And we're talking about more than a year of academic instructional loss. How are we prioritizing the social and emotional needs of students, our faculty and staff, and communities impacted by the pandemic, given the racial injustices or the reckoning and the increase in homicides and all the other traumas that were experienced, not just by our students, but our teachers, faculty, staff, our communities, including our parents. Another thing that I noticed in the plan is that there was not much narrative or plans presented in the actual proposed plan, at least, to address the academic remediation services. And so those are some of the things that comes to mind when I'm thinking about this proposed plan. Like I said, I appreciate the lessons learned and all of the opportunities that have been captured in a plan. But I think if I'm being honest and if I'm reflecting the concerns of my constituents, if I'm reflecting my concerns as a parent, I just feel like we can do so much more I recall reading an article, and I know I'm kind of going on and on, from the Rethinking Schools winter issue, and it was, I think, titled Who Cares About Classroom Norms? And it was really focused on human needs and community healing. And one of the things that was mentioned in the article was an inventory of needs that was developed by the Center for Nonviolence Communication. And the inventory was really focused on, or it was a tool to reflect on the met and unmet needs of students and to ultimately generate more classroom culturally relevant norms based on what students advocated for. And I think that's an opportunity, even as we talk about further engaging our students in the community. Like, I just think we can do so much better. I applaud this and I acknowledge that this is a start, but I would really push back and encourage for more community engagement, more community input that really is centered around student, faculty, and staff needs, and just more opportunities that have come from this. Another thing I want to do, I'm sorry, and cut me off if I'm going on and on.
Okay, go ahead.
But another thing I wanted to say was I really applaud the district for taking advantage, if I heard this right, taking advantage of the virtual aspect and acknowledging that many students thrived and made significant progress during this time, and that virtual or remote learning is not a bad thing. I think about my daughter, and I do want to give a shout out to some of the teachers that go to my ear. My daughter made such significant progress academically during this school year. And it was because her teachers, specifically Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Young, Mr. Avila, and Miss Kinney really took pride in developing an instructional experience remotely or virtually that accommodated the needs of their students, and my child thrived. And so I applaud the district for acknowledging that as an opportunity coming from such horrible times. And so, yes, I think this is a great start, but I think there's more that needs to be added to this plan, and really also to ensure that we are creating an opportunity to provide regular updates and details for progress, challenges, and more opportunities that will come. So again, I think this is a great start, but I don't think this is our best work.
Thank you very much.
That was a lot. Sorry.
No apologies needed. Administration, do you have any comments?
Yes, President Peterson, members of the board, and Director Carr, you're absolutely correct. There is no blueprint for this work. This has been a labor of love, trial and error, working with people. We have pulled together the 6 groups from day one. All the lessons learned that we talked about here, these are lessons learned that the group gave us. It ain't something that we pulled out and said, hey, I want to share this. But if someone asks me how many lessons I have learned from this, there's tons of lessons that I've learned, and we don't have enough paper to put it on tonight in order around lessons learned. But the idea is that where do we go from here? We have found ourselves in a major pandemic. How do we recover? And our children, we were, this is something that our children encountered that made life even worse for them. And so therefore, how do we regather? How do we rebuild? We started out with summer school. You have seen that we have a June term and a July term, and we have come up with a number of creative topics to pull individuals in. We have a record-setting number of over 5,800 students plus in summer school, when last year we were at the number of 500 or so. So that is in the June term. So it was because we offered things like robotics, STEM, geography, forensic science, just a number of different things that will get students up and going. Throughout the year, we have provided tutoring services for our young people to help catch them up, to help with learning loss, to make sure that they have what they need, and that will continue. Also, you see through the budget, we set money aside for professional development for staff to support social and emotional learning, restorative practices, and things of this nature to make sure that our children have those safety nets around them to support them. Additional counselors, social workers, psychologists, all of those individuals were added to our budget. and also looking at how do we constantly build those safety nets of tutoring and support. Even in the midst of the pandemic, we work with 32 different agencies to provide on-site learning right there on site with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee and a number of others to provide those services to meet those students' needs and to meet those students where they are. But all of that with safe and a healthy environment in the back of our minds to make sure all of our children were safe and making sure our staff was safe and making sure that we didn't add to the spread of COVID-19. So therefore, there is a number of different things, and we look forward to continue with those 6 work groups and working with individuals to better determine and better fine-tune where we are. And every week I've met with the Council of Great City School Superintendents from the large urban districts. They're doing the same things that we're doing. We're having the same conversations in every state that we are around the country here, as well as meeting with the Big 5 superintendents here in the state of Wisconsin. And all of our problems are the same. And we are all doing everything that we possibly can to meet the needs of students and to get them and take them to better places. And we will continue that work.
Thank you. Director Carr, any follow-up?
Yes, the work groups. There was mention of the 6 work groups. How were these work groups developed? Who's a part of these work groups? Are you able to share that information or provide us with a copy of the individuals that are a part of these work groups?
Thank you. Administration.
Chair Peterson, members of the board, Director Carr, yes, absolutely. Those work groups we started those work groups back in July of 20, and we worked with those work groups. Those work groups consist of school administration, MTEA, ASC, parents, staff here at the Central Administration Building, teachers at the schools, community members. We have a number of individuals on the committees that don't have children in the district, that have children in the district in the past, and they are still with us. We will provide you with that. We also, when we started this, there was notes that were taken at with the meetings, and we logged those so anybody could go in to see what those conversations were like and what they were talking about. So everything that we have identified these 6 areas to focus, but also people from all parts of the organization and the community is a part of it. And we also open it up for board members if board members wanted to be a part of those meetings.
Thank you. Now, Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Postley and administrative team for putting together this presentation. I think my question relies more on like the communications aspect to this plan. And, I think it's like you mentioned, this is the first time I think anyone has really experienced what teaching and working through a pandemic means, and the pivoting that had to be done and the emergency systems that had to be put in place. So I commend all the teachers that have just really gone above and beyond on making the school year happen, specifically administrative teams. But with that said, I guess communication to me is an open take and give type of relationship. So I know that there's within the plan that you mentioned that as far as like the first part of it, which is the releasing the information, that making sure that there's adequate translation service specifically that's available in a timely manner. I know that during my conversations, particularly within constituents in District 6, there's been a lot of, desire to have information available in a more timely manner. So I was just wondering if there was a plan as we're working through this of maybe a time commitment of what, as we're crafting these messages to ensure that, administration has a specific timeline in the turnaround so that we ensure that timely delivery and availability of these important communication documents are made available to our families, not just in Spanish, but in the many languages that our parents that we serve need. And that's part A. And part B is, the other side of things of what mechanisms are we. I know that in the presentation there is an option, a specific section for parent support. So I was just wondering if administration can talk a little bit more about the way that we're collecting, whether that's concerns or, just needs from our families as it relates to, specifically communications.
Administration.
Chair Peterson and members of the board, Director Garcia, thank you for your question. And I will say to you that one of the things that we are doing is to just make sure that we are communicating to families. Ever since day one, we have had a website that's out there for parents. There were letters that we sent out to families. We have a Friday newsletter that go out to families every single Friday, explaining everything that's happening. We make sure we translate it over into the 8 or 9 languages that we translate into, and making sure that that is there. We also have frequent asked questions that is posted out there, and anything that comes through. We have a hotline where families can call in with their complaints or concerns and share with us, and those kinds of things that we addressed and lean into. Also, on an ongoing basis, I am receiving emails, phone calls, letters from families, and also following up with those letters as well to make sure that we are meeting their needs and getting families the things that they want. However, when it comes to this summer and the work that has to be done, you also notice that's in the from a lessons learned. We know that we needed to lean in when it came to communications, and you see that those 5 positions that were laid into the budget. One of the bigger areas is marketing. Because we needed to get a marketing expert on board. And all of those positions are laid out there so that we can do just that. And we have not taken that for granted. And from day one, we have had one of the bullets was effective communication, and making sure that we had the communication team, Cherie, at the table every single time. They have a communications team that meets, and all of the stuff that we were doing. And the goal was, how do you translate this in to making sure that the general public and everyone knows exactly what is being said and what we are trying to do within the district. And also, I'll let Cherie kind of speak to the idea of the steps by steps that you also see in the plan of some of the things that we are going to move forward with this year. Cherie?
Good evening, President Peters, member of the board, Cherie Douglas, Director of Communications and Outreach. Just to piggyback off what Dr. Posley said, we are ramping up and looking forward to engaging more with our families. We will be using, I would say, more out-of-home resources to reach and connect with our families, and using more translations to reach out to our community partners that service our families, as well as TV, social media, billboards in communities, so that the message is carried a little bit further.
Go ahead, Ichabod.
Another topic that, President Peterson, members of the board, Director Garcia, another resource that we haven't mentioned today but came up quite a few times in some of the work group conversations that we've had are parent coordinators. They are often a direct line from our parents to us. Our school administrators, our teachers, again, have given us feedback that we take into account. And they were all parts and members of these work groups, and we'll continue to access them as we move forward. Oftentimes, as Ms. Douglas said, we have to reach out in different ways. We often hear that we didn't hear, or we didn't hear soon enough. We would love feedback as to ways that we may be missing. We do, again, social media, we do radio, we do print, we do email. But if there are other things that we're missing, we certainly are happy to hear that. And if we can make it happen, we certainly will.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Director Garcia?
Yes, I mean, I know that this is getting maybe into the weeds of things, but is there a plan in terms of communicating with maybe languages that don't have a written like alphabet? Like, is that where the hotline comes in?
Administration.
President Peter, members of the board, Sri Douglas, Director of Communication Outreach. Right now, what we currently do is we take our messaging and we have it orally translated, so it's interpreted, and we send it via auto dialer for those families currently.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Director Gokul-Gandhi.
Superintendent Posley administration, just want to echo everybody's comments. Thank you so much on your hard work, as well as all of our educators who have kept the mission and vision of our district afloat. And I just have a couple of buckets of clarification here. So I think one thing that seemed to be missing through the presentation was really talking about student voice and how we're going to ensure that we are constantly assessing what our kids need and what is missing and what is going to help them come back to school. So I'd like to see in this plan more of a concentration on a needs assessment. I really liked what Director Carr said, when she referenced the Rethinking Schools piece on understanding our students' needs. So just some regular form of assessing culture surveys, specifically geared towards our kids, right? Because they have really had, I would say, more of a year than most of us have had. And so there are some really serious things that they're going to need, but there's also an element of joy that we're going to need to provide to them. And I just want to make sure that we're really asking them at every moment, what do you need? What's missing? How can we get it to you? And so I would like to hear a little bit about how we're going to procure that feedback. Secondly, again, just with communications, it was trial by fire, so I totally understand, but I would also like to see a monthly update on our communications plan. What does that look like? Who are we reaching out to? What are the metrics? Some of the public testimony today talked a little bit about what is the communications plan for those who we haven't reached, right? So what are the metrics associated with who we're trying to reach, and what are our target goals of how many parents we're trying to get in touch with? I'd like to see some of these metrics outlined so that we all have an understanding of what success looks like with communications, because I think this was one of the biggest opportunities that we really had during the pandemic that we didn't necessarily live up to. Third is testing. What is the plan for rapid testing in our schools, and who will be administering those tests? I think that's going to be really important. And I think that's, again, I heard in my district, that was continually something that came up. Regular reopening reports would be great. And then the fifth thing I had, in terms of the building renovations, is there a triage process for this? I know we're going to talk about it over the next 3 years, but some of our buildings really do need immediate assistance. And I know that there is a IDP plan, but is there a abbreviated plan to address those buildings that are in desperate need of renovation? So those are kind of my I know I did, that's a lot. So let me know if you need clarification on any of those things, and thank you.
Administration.
Thank you, President Peterson, Director Gokul-Gandhi. Thank you for your question. And I would say to you, student voice has always been key to the administration and this district. One of the things that we talked about in the presentation is the two summits, and I know a number of you had an opportunity to go to those leadership summits for our students. That was some of the things that we were asking of our students to give us that information as well on a number of amazing topics that they talked about. And also the superintendent's advisory council and some of those kinds of things are shared with them as well around those lenses and talking about and getting feedback for our young people. But one of the things that I've learned today with going to 3 different graduations, Alliance, Riverside University High School, and as I represent the Rufus King Mass tonight, the Rufus King High School, International Baccalaureate High School, and I noticed that students, and they were all distanced. standing in their spots, not a whole lot of talking, and not a whole lot of camaraderie. And that is because our young people have not been together. And so we know there is a social and emotional need that needs to take place. And I went to student after student and asked questions. How are you doing? What's your plans? And those kinds of things. They had answers, but usually when it's a graduation, it's so noisy that you can't hear what's going on. So therefore, we know that we need more student input in where they are and working with them. And we're going to do, and that's something that we will look at, is the idea of how do we get more outreach to students to kind of talk about what's needed and what their needs are, looking at that and looking for student outreach. As far as testing, that is something that we put in the plan, but looking at how do we go through and work with that, looking at what lessons we learned from surveillance testing that we just got through and got completed with, will be complete with on June 30th, and looking at that. And then looking at where do we go, talking with other school districts around the country around what type of tests. Are they doing rapid tests? What type of tests that they're doing? A large number of districts are doing no type of test. But looking at those kinds of things and trying to find out, but that is some of the work that the health and safety team will delve into and bring back. Everything that you see in this document is not from the administration, it is also from those individuals who have worked with us through those 6 groups to provide that information for us. As far as communication, I'll be the first to say that we are pushing and got a number of different things out there. We have no problem with a timeline around what we are doing with the communication, how we plan to get there. We are working on a robust plan to get there. We talked about what we're going to do with our schools to make sure that they have an open house, going to be reaching out to families and doing all of those things this summer. And then also having teachers as well as staff at that particular school to reach out to maintain the students that we do already have by writing letters and phone calls and things of that nature. Then at the district level, Mr. Boswell's team has had canvassers out every single year, going at all the events throughout the city, going door to door. Anywhere there's families, we have that staff there to do that. And then also the third component of that is this whole thing around collaboration with the community, because every single time I had run into people, they said, hey, have you looked into having, there's a number of groups that work with and out at doors. Could you have them to pass literature and those kinds of things? How do we interact with those groups and make things happen? And then the last piece that you asked me about was this whole thing around buildings. And I will have Sean to come to the table and kind of talk about that. But we have a procurement process that kind of slows the process. We can't just go out and just say, hey, we're going to do this. This is who we're going to go and contract with. We got policies and procedures that Sean is working in to try to follow and try to speed this process as fast as possible. Sean, take it away.
President Peterson, Director Golgandi, members of the board, Sean Kane, Interim Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. As Dr. Posley indicated, we're trying to streamline and expedite this as much as possible. We do have limited resources and manpower within our department, and we're looking to expand that. So this is an opportunity we're able to utilize that and take more advantage of the limited time of dollars that we have to spend, especially with this is related to a lot of the ESSER funding piece where there's a 2 to 3 year window, and trying to take a look at that and see what's the best way of going about this. So right now we've already, besides doing all the typical things we've always been doing over the years, at this point, you have to identify what the problem is at a building before you can solve it. So that's part of our issue right now is we're taking our consultants and our contractors are going to be going through vetting the buildings, taking a look what possible repairs or what corrects or improvements, I should say, can be done. So right now we're already been going through that process at the moment, but getting that integrated project development piece in place, that will allow us to, like I said, expand our resources, I would say it's kind of a construction expert that also assists us that here's where you want to utilize your dollars and move forward on things. But also, as Dr. Posley indicated, I have to work with 3.09 to make sure we're following board policy with our contract procedures.
Thank you. Anything else from the administration? Director Gokul Gandhi, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, just generally, everything that you're saying sounds great, and I want to be the biggest cheerleader for this. But I think, again, just moving forward, there needs to be some accountability, right? So whether we can help you develop those metrics and measures, or you do that and present it to us. I just would like to know, as the months go on, again, especially around this communications, what are our goals? What are our targets? If we're not reaching those goals and targets, how can we be helpful? And who do we need to engage, and how do we need to engage them? Because I think we got to make up for some lost time to no one's. I realize yet it was a special year, but I just again want to really zero in on the communications, and not just internally, but also externally. We've done some amazing things over the last year. I mean, 1.7 million meals, that's amazing. That's insane. We should celebrate that. And I just think there's so much brilliance in our district, and it would be a miss to not get that out there too. So thank you again for all your hard work.
Thank you. Director Herndon. Director Herndon, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you. I want to keep it rather brief. I think that, first of all, I do appreciate the work that administration has done. It has been extensive. However, this is not new. We knew we had a serious problem with communications, and that has not changed. And that's the thing that the message that I keep hearing tonight. For my part of it, I would say, again, that what we need is the detail, and not that there's anything wrong, but that we need to celebrate it on one hand. On the other hand, parents want to hear. They want to hear the detail in terms of, like I was looking through the Road to Readiness and some other documents in terms of registering students for summer school. And I myself got mixed up in terms of the terminology for the high school students. There were several terms used to reference what was going to happen with the high school students. For example, credit recovery, acceleration, a boost program, and summer school enrichment. Now, if a parent wants to register their child for summer school, which one of these would they choose without them being explained? They're all kind of thrown in out there, and depending on what page you're seeing, you'll see one of those. So when it comes to the communication, we need to pay attention to the messaging at the detail level, so that there's no doubt that if a parent has a student who fell behind, for lack of a better term, and the parent or the student feels that they need some enrichment or a little more intense programming for the summer school session, that they can readily identify what is going to be available and offered to their student. The other thing that I saw in the Road to Readiness, and there again, I'm questioning, it's saying that each school, I moved from my page, each school will create a summer enrollment program plan and host a summer open house. What is that exactly? If I could hear from administration, what does that mean? Does it mean that the school is going to write their own communications program or something of that effect? And there again, I don't necessarily understand what that means. And that's the type of examples that I most readily pull out of here. And I think it's consistent with the questions that everyone else is asking. If we were to look at the lessons that we as directors learned over the hundreds, if not thousands, of emails that we received when we returned to school in the spring, we should go back and review some of those, and take a look at those and see what were perhaps the major complaints that the community had, and that would be the foundation for our learning from our mistakes, for lack of a better term, and our efforts to move forward and do a better job.
Thank you. Thank you. Administration.
President Peterson and members of the board, thank you, Director Herndon, for your question. One of the things that we have is the idea, our goal is to make sure that we could get as many students as we possibly can in summer school. Usually we have 7,500 students in summer school. We looked at our results, the results of the data that we have. We have basically about 23,000 students that need some form of summer school, or we could fall into the category of summer school. So when looking at that, we know at the high school level, we know all about algebra and science and history and those kinds of things, but also what are some of the other things that we could catch students to come to school to have? They may not want to come to the biology class, but they might want to come to a forensic science class or something of this nature. But what we're trying to do is do everything that we can to catch students, to get them intrigued to come to summer school. And then we are working through that. And I could say we could probably blame it on a marketing piece or whatever, but it was our efforts to make sure that we could enroll as many students as possible, because our students have been in a virtual platform for a longer period of time. Want to make sure that children work their way back, get used to being back in face-to-face instruction. So this is some of the efforts that we went forward to do. This is something that is also modeled after College for Kids, like they do at UWM. So therefore we wanted children to take some of these courses. Same thing we have done with the elementary piece around some of the courses that is not offered during the regular school year to get students moving forward there. So I will also take the feedback and look at how we can better serve better make a catalog out for the upcoming school year to make sure that everyone is 100% sure and clear. But we also have counselors that work with students if there's a need or question about how will this class qualify for a math class, or does it qualify for an English class, or is it just an elective? So those kinds of things that we are constantly working through. The other piece is this whole thing around the school plan. One of the things that we have learned, and one of the slides we talked about, this whole thing around communication and a team effort. We as a district and as a leadership team, we can't force ideas and things of this nature on various school communities. So we set a parameter. And so the parameter was the idea, number one, that everyone must have an open house. And then number two, you must have some point of contact with your families, whatever that may be. You can do it 5 times or 15 times or whatever. But the idea that give each school community an opportunity to work together with their school community, because all school communities are not the same. And we understand that, and to work to see how they want to do it. They got teachers, staff that know the children, that is constantly in communication with the children, and find out ways. And so therefore, what we are doing is allowing school communities to draft their own plan and model. And they will turn that into their regional superintendent. Their regional superintendent will take a look at it and make sure it meets the needs of all of the areas that we wanted as a point of contact. But this is also lessons learned for us, because there are a number of different things that each school community is going to come up with that we can share out to everyone. So it is transparent that everyone could, they may be writing letters over here, maybe a letter writing campaign over here, and it may be a dance or a sock hop or whatever the situation at some other school. So we get an opportunity for schools to share that, and we want to push individual school leadership and teams to work together, because they know what's best for their community. Because otherwise, if we did it the other way, you'll be hearing that central office is telling us to do this way, and they didn't think about this. So we're giving them those opportunities to think about it. And I have Dr. John Hill here, who will elaborate a little bit more when it comes to the summer school offerings. Dr. Hill.
President Peterson, Director Herndon, members of the board. I did hear the question regarding boost camps, and essentially following what Dr. Posley said, that's exactly what we did do. Boost is a new computer software program that students can use to work on building their academic skills. So we offered that opportunity to all of our school communities, and we had 6 of them, so all 6 said, we want to do this for our students. So we worked with them to provide them that opportunity to utilize this tool to help catch their students up and build their skills to help ready them for next year. And those 6 sites are Bradley Tech, Golden Mile Upper, Madison, Metcalf, Riverside, and Wedgwood. So we basically offered that opportunity to all schools in the district, and those were the takers.
Okay. Anything else from the administration?
No,
Okay.
not at this time.
Okay. Follow up. Yeah. Follow up, Director Herndon.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hill. What you stated was exactly my point, which was the lack of even knowing what that was. And that proves my point. Not that anyone was doing anything wrong, but parents needed to know that. They needed to know that this would perhaps work for their family or their students. So hats off to that. It's probably a very good product, but please, going forward, put that in the documentation so the community knows what that is. I think that'll go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Director O'Halloran.
I would be happy to ask my question now, but I believe that Director Leonard would be next based on alphabet.
I was just doing that on purpose to see if anybody catch it. Yeah,
We're
very
secretary
good.
here. I know my alphabet.
Okay. Director Leonard.
Okay, thank you. That's good because otherwise I'd have about 10 more questions after that. Just kidding. First of all, administration, thank you. I know this is probably an unpleasant task, to say the least. Very challenging. I've heard from parents on a daily basis, staff members on a daily basis. My first question comes down to, and you sort of answered this, Dr. Posley, but testing has been highly inconsistent. And are we retaining the company that was hired to implement this? That's the first question. So keep that in mind. I have some concerns about the virtual option, actually quite a few concerns. This really needs to be extremely detailed and specific. Right now, when I walk into buildings, I see about a 60-40, about 60% not there, 40% there. Definitely do not want to see concurrent instruction. I would never vote for anything that has concurrent instruction. I think that was almost like torture for some of our teachers, to be honest. But how are we going to approach the virtual option? How do we know who's going to be in it? What are the parameters for that? I don't want to cause any more confusion with the virtual options that we're thinking. I think it's a great idea to have virtual options, but also what we see now and what we see in early fall is not what we're going to see capacity-wise in December. In December, our vaccination rates should be extremely high. So we have to have a conversion plan, and I don't know how that's going to affect a virtual option at that point in time. So I think there's a lot of questions that go with that. After visiting all these schools, some of the biggest concerns from administration and actually the parent coordinators, because I talk to both individuals when I go to every building, is enrollment. There's some panic about enrollment. Not every school has it, but many of them do. And we live and die on enrollment. And I got to be honest with you, it's something that really just sort of drives me. Do we have enough people out there really to be able to reach all of our parents, because I believe that we are just not reaching them. I don't believe that we're getting to where we have to go. So I don't see us having enough capacity to actually go out there and get everybody. I've already been asked by 4 schools, but I can't multiply myself. So that would be great to do door to door and reach people that we've not been able to reach over the past 18 months. But I am very concerned about it. I should just want to mention that the DAC is on Thursday. So I think that something to that effect should be presented to all of the parents that are on the DAC so that they're aware of it, aware of your plans on both the open houses and the enrollment issues with regards to our parent coordinators. And then also honest assessment on staffing. Just a question, where are we? I sort of have to agree with Amy Misiolka and others that we need to actually incentivize the vaccinations, but I'm hoping that we can draw some teachers in from other districts even. I actually think there's potential for that. Just food for thought.
Dr. Leonard, you've asked about 4 questions. Why don't we let them...
oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Superintendent Administration.
President Peterson and members of the board, Director Leonard, I will try to follow the questions that you had in that order. You talked about testing. I will share with you tonight that we have had an opportunity to get into 388 classrooms throughout the district since the start of testing. And also that one other thing that I would add is that at about 94% of the tests coming back negative. So that is out there as well. And when you talk about this virtual learning, I'll be the first to say that virtual is going to be a lift for the administration. I want to make that clear because we're talking about creating a school. When we usually create a school at a minimum is 15 to 18 months to do so. We're talking about turning this thing around in a month. I had a team of individuals that roughly 2 months. I have a team of individuals that have been working on this particular piece. DPI is giving us, given all districts a pass, around some of the alignment when it comes to having a virtual program or a virtual school. So we're looking at that, but also looking at this whole thing around enrollment. How do we have a virtual option that does not impede on schools? Because we are driven by numbers. So if we got 60% of students in and another 40% out, that is not going to be able to hold us. So we got to make sure that whatever we do around that particular piece, it doesn't drive down enrollment. Any type of true virtual option, that a standalone virtual option, have to take the dollars for students, that they have enrolled in order to pay the staff of the school. So what we are trying to do is a program that will allow us, a K-12 program that will allow us to be able to do just that and to be able to work to get our students back. Our goal is to, I know that we want to work with the comfort level of families, but want to make sure that we make families aware that our schools are safe and get everyone back into the regular school environment. And so that's our goal around that particular piece. We currently already have a 6 through 12 concept of a program in the school right now, in our district right now, that we could also use. But when we talk about enrollment is big. We have to do a number of different things around enrollment. That is one of the things that's keeping me up at night, is this whole thing around enrollment, because when we look at enrollment numbers for the last school year, when we look at kindergarten, K3, K4, K5, first grade, our students did not return in large numbers. And so therefore, families have said to us, when we have a in-person option, we will be back. So therefore, looking to bring those students back. And then also, why have we not been able to get some of the students that we have not been able to find? That is truly because of door-to-door services. And therefore, the virus has not allowed us to go knock on doors to say, where's Keith Posley? We need you at school. Now that things are opening up, we will be able to do that. We will be able to get people to doors, get information out there, and those kinds of things, because we have to find those students as well. So now our social workers and social worker assistants and then attendance liaisons can go out to those homes and do just that. We are truly open to getting information to the DAC. So I know you inquired about that. We'll be happy to do just that, because we're going to need all the help that we can get. And the other side of this is trying to make sure that we're getting out to all of these various location business partners, community partners, to get that message out there, and also have that opportunity to go into various places and remind people that we have seats in the Milwaukee Public Schools that we can move forward. The last item you talked about was staffing. We showed and talked about two various job fairs that's happening, and there's a number of other job fairs that's going on, and we're talking to various groups. They have from some virtual interviews and things that are happening on a daily basis, and virtual locations, working with deans at various universities around the country to, the travel. We are not traveling to go there. We're still doing all those kinds of things. When travel starts back up, we'll be back out there to do some of those kinds of things as well. The other avenue around staffing is that we are now trying to work with universities to look for individuals that, at the college campus that their mind may not be made up on what they want to do and the kind of career they want to have, and to get them in as, to shadow or come into our schools and to work that way. So we're looking at every opportunity that we possibly can to recruit individuals and trying to find that staff that's needed. And when you talk about staff, with everything being closed up, not only the Milwaukee Public School, everyone is looking for individuals to work. And so we're going to continue to push and continue to be out there at those job fairs and trying to make it happen to recruit staff on every angle we can.
Thank you. Director Leonard, one follow-up?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
I'm good. Well, first of all, I'm sort of relieved to hear about your concerns with virtual. So we're on the same page with that. And I just didn't want us to go into it thinking that it'd be something that would be easy to do. So I'm sort of glad we're going to handle that challenge as it really is. The last thing is any kind of specific parameters for 3-foot distance. Second graders versus 8th graders in a classroom is a world of difference. Just out of curiosity, what's the thinking on that? How that's going to take place? And that'll be my last question.
Administration.
Chair Peterson and members of the board, we have been thinking about that, looking at the square footage of all of our classrooms. Not all classrooms are created the same, and looking at what that looked like, looking at the numbers trend a little higher sometime for us at the high school level. But also knowing that right now from 12 and older can be vaccinated, so they can get the vaccine. We are pushing that to try to make sure as many as our young people and families are doing that. 5 locations out there within the district to make sure that it's happening on a daily basis, and we are constantly pushing to see how we can make that happen. So that's one thing. But the question around, is it a difference? It absolutely is a difference. And older children have a way of staying away from one another a little bit more versus smaller children have a opportunity. Every chance you get, you've been in elementary school, that they love to wander over to each other if there's something that's going on. So we're going to have to look at that particular piece. That was one of the reasons that we talked about the plexiglass barriers and things of this nature, and trying to make sure that we look at doing that a little different. If you just think about a high school classroom where everybody's vaccinated, the 3 feet is something that we could start to kind of take a look at and kind of talk about, but we don't know that right now. So looking at that and also taking lessons learned from other districts that are doing this and districts around the state that is doing it, and trying to get more information and every single day bring something new with COVID-19, and we're learning something new. So therefore, seeing how and what that will look like. And it's a day by day piece. So, but we have been tossing that particular piece around and seeing, is there, do we have enough square footage and what can be done?
Thank you. We're going to move on to Director O'Halloran. It's your turn now.
Thank you, President Peterson. And I do want to say that I believe that the Reagan Huskies will be taking the stage in about 8 minutes for graduation. So I just wanted to send my congratulations to them. And I'm sorry I can't be with them in person. My question, and I'll try to keep it to one, is specifically around vaccines. Do we have a repository for collecting vaccine information? I am not at this point saying like it's mandatory or anything, but having accurate records about vaccine status would help us make better informed local level decisions. It would help for a number of reasons. And I know that we have heard some, rumblings about vaccine incentivization. I would hesitate to say $500 per person employee, because I think we also need to recognize that there are students in the building. And if we're going to incentivize vaccines, we should find a way to also incentivize vaccines for our students, because they make up a large portion of the people in our buildings. And so do we have a repository for vaccine information? And if not, can we start building that and getting a messaging toolkit to start having these conversations? I recognize that this is a highly politicized issue when it shouldn't be, but I think this is incredibly important information that'll help us make decisions if we see an uptick in cases, or, in the alternative, and hopefully that the community rates will start to drop even further than they already are. And then at some point we can start talking about, when do we maybe relax some of the masking mandates for specific like speech paths or people where it actually might be a hindrance less than just an inconvenience. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Administration.
President Peterson and members of the board, Director O'Halloran, thank you for your questions. And I also want to start out with a shout out for North Division Blue Devils. They started their graduation ceremony at 7:30 in 5 minutes as well. But as far as the keeping a record of students that has been vaccinated, at this time, we do not have records of students or staff that has been vaccinated. So we don't have that information. That is something that I could go to the city attorney's office and question and inquire about, can this be done, and how we will do this, because this is also someone's personal health record. And so therefore, I don't know the legality of doing that, but that is something that we can take a closer look at. You also talked about mask wearing and various individuals not being able to wear their mask at a certain time. What we're trying to do is to try to stay uniform as possible, because, if one group is allowed not to wear the mask and then the other group has to wear a mask, it gets it's this back and forth, and everyone is really always trying to marshal what's happening around the mask. And I do know that that is something that we have talked about as well, because we are going to be confronted with the idea there is not a mandate for a mask requirement right now in the city of Milwaukee. But we still have it in the Milwaukee public schools, and rightfully we can do so. But I can see that as a challenge as well that's coming. And so therefore, we're looking at how do we gather and how do we be proactive and get that information prior to.
Follow up, Director O'Halloran.
I just want to be clear. I am not advocating for relaxing mask requirements at this time. I just think that if we have vaccine status, if we can, come to the conclusion that in a school, 60% of the people are vaccinated, it might make a difference about, how we move forward in the future. So, no, and I do want to float the idea that if we're going to do an incentive, I think it would be really cool if we could do like the lottery system in Ohio, that if we can collect this information and somebody provides us with their vaccine coverage, that they are fully vaccinated, if we could come up with a program where we had scholarship opportunities for students, maybe the MPS Foundation could hold it in trust until they're graduated, that they would have money waiting for them at the end of their schooling with us to go on for college, for trade school or whatever. And I think that it would be a really great way to incentivize those behaviors that would protect themselves, their families, and their communities. And we could do something similar on the employee side, but in Ohio, there was an uptick of 55% in vaccine rates the week following when they announced the program. And so I definitely support a carrot rather than a stick approach. And I think maybe we don't need to be so huge with a dollar amount, and we can still have a huge impact and benefit our students and our staff as well. So just thoughts to marinate on. Thanks.
Sounds good. Director Seamson.
Thank you. And I'd like to just start as we are nearing the end of the school year by thanking all of our educators, as other board directors have, for their phenomenal work in this incredibly challenging year. So just want to thank them, and also thank administration for this this information that you're sharing with us tonight. I think that, I'd just like to support some of the other concerns that my colleagues have raised. Communication obviously is a huge area. I think that from the board director's perspective down to families and students, we really need to make sure that we are more mindful and careful of what we're communicating. And that kind of ties into the PowerPoint presentation. We were criticized for passing a PowerPoint presentation as our plan the last time around. So I'm hoping that this can come back to us with a few more details, as some of the other directors have mentioned, as embedded into this as more of a plan. I think of our families who are reading through this in terms that they might not understand, or language that we're using that they may not understand. There was vertical grade level articulation and details around academic acceleration, and what does SEL look like for my student. Also, just in terms of additional information our families might need, if I'm someone choosing that virtual option, am I held to that for the school year? Are we going to revisit this at specific times, Thanksgiving or Christmas? Is it going to be based around a grading period? Is there flexibility built into that? What does that look like for some of our families who are enrolled in specific programs like Montessori or the language programs? And are those seats held open for them? So just, the devil is always in the details. So I think just a more comprehensive plan with additional details would be really helpful to our families and people who are tuning in. I just want to echo the concern about enrollment that has already been raised. I do have a little bit of concern regarding schools. Not that schools shouldn't create their own plan in addition to what the district is doing, but we do know that some schools are just better resourced to create and carry out an enrollment plan. So, are there certain things that we're doing to help support some schools who might be under-resourced at this time to help them boost their enrollment? And tied to enrollment, are we targeting specific areas of this? I know we're doing just a blanket enrollment, but are we also targeting certain specific areas? I'm assuming that we're going to really hit hard the early childhood grade levels. And then just finally, one of the big concerns I have is this idea of academic acceleration. So, we have new curriculum going into the hands of our staff. We have everybody kind of coming together after an incredibly challenging year plus. And we know that there are going to be social emotional needs. So I just, I hate to see too much pressure being placed on staff who's kind of trying to wrap their mind around all of that, new curriculum, new procedures and protocols, a larger group of children coming back through the door, that critical, important piece of social emotional learning. And, again, going back to sort of those inequities within our schools, some schools are going to have lots of resources and support, some may not have as much. So just a little bit of concern with that idea of, I know we have to, we're working hard to get our students learning as much as they can, but a little bit of concern about that. So yes,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
You'll have a chance to follow up. Administration, would you like to respond, please?
President Peterson and members of the board, Director Simpson, thank you for your question. One of the things that I want to make clear is the idea around a plan. And it's been said so many times about the plan. We rolled out a plan over 253 pages, and with an addendum to it each time, we made it perfectly clear. This is a PowerPoint to our plan. The plan was rolled out. We went through phase 1, which was total virtual, and phase 2 was hybrid and in person. And so therefore, and we're just rolling right into, we are not changing anything of that magnitude. And we've been working with it and have stayed with it from day one. The 6 work groups is a part of the plan that we have. So, I just want to make it clear that we have truly have always had a plan since July. And that same plan has been pushed. As far as reporting back students, from a virtual standpoint, a virtual platform, we are looking and have had conversation, but have not landed on anything as of yet. We talked about monthly being able to return back. We talked about a term. We have talked about a semester. We have talked about a quarter. We've talked about a number of different things, but our ultimate goal is to try to have all of our students back as soon as possible, because we have to be able to staff our virtual option that we have. And also, if we are saying that those dollars are going to stay with the school, we won't be able to carry that out for long, extended periods of time. So our goal is to work all of our students back into in-person learning. And as far as this around money, around schools having the resources, you are absolutely correct. All schools are not created the same when it comes to funding and those kinds of things. All of our schools have a contingency plan, and we talk about what needs to happen. And that whole piece around that third Friday, how we ramp up for third Friday to make sure they have a meet and beat number. Each principal and staff have to know their number, know what number they need to hit in order that no staff will be cut or anything of that nature. We are also looking at like you said, how do we provide those additional resources for those school communities to be able to have a robust plan around recruitment and making sure that we are moving forward and making things happen. I'll be the first to say, when we shift and talk about professional development opportunities, we have new textbooks coming in. Our reading series is going to be coming in. There's all kind of PD that's going to be going into that. Our new science adoption is going to be coming in. There's work around that. There's still going to be work around the social and emotional learning. And then we want to make sure that we are providing rigor, because not only do we have to meet our students' social and emotional needs, we got to meet their academic needs. And that is one of the things that when I talk to families and they ask, and share why they're leaving or going, we have to make sure that we are meeting those needs as well. And I am the first to say that it's going to be a lot of professional development this summer for our staff, administrators, everyone that's involved, to make sure that we are prepared and ready to move forward for the upcoming school year.
Follow-up, Director Simpson?
Yeah, just kind of a little bit, just a smidge about the social emotional learning. We all know that the best learning takes place when you have that great classroom community and culture in your school. And, if we foresee a greater need for our students in that area, knowing that we might not have the additional social workers, psychologists in that building to support them, I feel like our teachers really need to have as many tools in their toolbox as they can to support our students. So I know that some of the callers were talking about that the professional development for social emotional learning, and would just kind of support their idea that that's really going to benefit us well in the long run, to be able to reach our students academically by meeting that social emotional need first. So I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Director Taylor.
Thank you, President Peterson. Follow my colleagues in saying administration for giving this up. None of us have ever lived through a pandemic. So I understand that this is challenging. As I sit and listen, a lot of my colleagues, many of my colleagues have already asked some of the questions that I had. My follow-up and my comment would be, if we're talking about enrollment and going out into our community, I would like to make sure that we're doing more talk than just about enrollment, maybe about what some of those families need in order to be successful, by talking to the parents, the community, and our babies while they're continuing in MPS. And for those that are not MPS students, I'm hoping if we run across those two, we are asking or persuading those to come back, but also making sure that we talk about and address some of the challenges that made them leave or some of the issues. I often feel we can't do one without the other, so I would like to see that. I know myself and President Peterson also talked about going out this summer, being in the community, talking with our students and families, and just making sure that we're listening, but also getting some great feedback on some of the things that we can change. When I also hear about going back into the school setting, having that virtual attention. I have not ran across a lot of people that absolutely love virtual, whether it was our babies or our staff, but I understood for the protection and safety, it was something that we need. So if we are offering that virtual option again, I think we need to thoroughly look through what does that look like for our students, our families, and absolutely for our staff. Before, I know we did it because we had to do it for safety, but there were plenty individuals as well as families that did not like the option. So we definitely should think about what are we doing to change those. So what are we doing as far as the enrollment and going back into the community, making sure we're talking about more than enrollment? And then what options are we looking at for virtual? Because we know what we used presently did not work out well for anybody.
Administration.
President Peterson and members of the board, Vice President Taylor, thank you for your questions. And I 110% agree that we are going to have to be in the neighborhood. We're going to have to be talking about all of the issues that have caused families to go in other directions and what we need to do to bring families back to the Milwaukee Public Schools. I would also say that any virtual options that we offer is going to have to be limited, because we don't have the staffing capacity to be able to spread ourselves, especially if there's no concurrent teaching, to be able to do that. And so therefore, we are going to have to make sure that it's limited and also within a time frame to try to get back to in person. And so, but we are looking at every opportunity around enrollment. We will continue to do that and continue to push to make sure that when we're talking to families, we ask those questions: what are the needs? How do we meet those needs? And some of those needs that families may have that we may not have even addressed tonight, but we have to be prepared. And the things that we have pulled out are some of the needs that we know for right now. But there are a number of individuals that we are yet to talk to because of the safety measure and those kinds of things. So I'm one of those individuals that are ready to do anything that we possibly can to regain our enrollment and to make sure that we meet our families and students' needs and make sure that Milwaukee Public Schools is the first choice.
A follow-up, Vice President Taylor?
Thank you, President Peterson. The other two things my colleagues addressed on too is that mental health piece and communication. We often say we have so many resources and things for families in reference of mental health. Maybe we need to see what strategies we are using to communicate that so that they can understand it. And having a 200 and something page thing, I know it's detailed, but when I think about our families within the community, it's so many different levels of things that they are dealing with. We need language that they absolutely can understand and not education language. I know I came from the MPS side, so some of it I understand, but dealing with people that is not their profession or their career, we need to talk with them, not at them, so that they have a better understanding of what's going on and always make sure they're working with us and we're not working against each other, whether it's staff, students, employees. Families are communication, so I would love to see us doing more on that communication piece as well too.
Administration, want to comment or?
President Peterson, Vice President Taylor, members of the board. I think sometimes when we talk about communication, we do omit to talk about some of that occurs at the school level, specifically around social emotional learning when we consider in a virtual environment. Although those resources were available and accessible, you're right, sometimes parents didn't know where to look, didn't know how to get them. But as we return to in-person, I consider and think about things like our social workers, our school counselors, our school psychs that are already there and have been doing that work all along. Things like SAG groups, student groups that occur on a daily basis when we are in person. And not that that didn't happen in the virtual environment, but it was obviously much more challenging. And that human contact and aspect of that was missing. But that's all available. Student inventories to judge when students are in need are resources that we have. Any student that has any kind of issue around ideation of self-harm, we have processes in place to deal with those things, and we will continue to push that out. And that's much more readily available to our families and to our students when they are with us, obviously, not that they're not available in the virtual. If I can flip just a little bit in terms of enrollment as well, as Dr. Posley stated, a lot of the reason that this is something that's done more at the school level and then at a different level for the district is, you know, when we consider our neighborhoods, the languages of our neighborhoods, the cultures of our neighborhoods, the daycares in our neighborhood, those relationships that our school communities have with those agencies already, restaurants in our neighborhoods, and things that we do to reach out in that way. So we do all those things. Maybe we need to do a better job of communicating that happens, but those are all done. And again, when we think about even competition, and we've talked about that, right? And all the schools that want our students, but also then talking about STEM, talking about all our labs that we have available, music, bands, orchestra. I keep going back to languages because that's something that's near and dear to my heart, but our ability to have bilingual immersion, different kinds of programs that other people don't have, and certainly not to the extent or the quality that we have. And individual schools do a wonderful job of communicating that. And I just want to make sure that's known as well. We do plan on getting out when, you know, we know that, for example, Mexican Fiesta will be operating. We know that, I believe, State Fair, I'm not sure about that. And there will be other communities, churches and festivals that we can go get those kids too, right? There's no reason to say that we couldn't go out there and get them, and individual schools do that.
Thank you. Vice President Taylor, anything else?
No, I was going to call on you because I know you have
Yeah.
I have plenty of more, but I'm going to be respectful of my colleagues.
Okay, I'll pass the gavel to you.
So noted.
Director Peterson.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I want to echo what all the school board members have said or think, which is to thank all educators, all the workers in our district, not just the educators, although we all educate in our district. But thank you, and from the most well-paid to the least well-paid, from the people who are fixing the food to the people who are cleaning our toilets. You know, this is to everyone. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to present a motion, but I wanted to say this is not a motion that's going to answer all the questions. A lot of great questions were coming. The intention of this motion is to put some things on the record today so that the community knows the direction we're moving towards. And secondly, to list, as you'll see in the last item of the motion, a number of things that people have talked about today, but for us to make a decision about some of those things today would be very premature on our part, because more discussion needs to happen, more stakeholders need to be in play to voice their opinions, and we need more information. So I'll pause a couple times just to explain. I believe this motion is now been put up on the website under for tonight's meeting. Is that true, Dr. Mann?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Madam Chair,
Yes.
members of the board, the motion will be put up once the board takes action on it if the motion is approved.
Okay.
Board members who are considering the action have received via email the motion.
Okay. Well, then
You're so with Director Peterson.
Okay, so for the listening audience, I'll speak slowly. I move approval of the administration's recommendation, and I move that we further direct the administration to proceed with planning and implementation for a full in-person, face-to-face, 5 days a week return to school for students for both August and September start dates. The planning and implementation should start immediately and include at a minimum the following parameters. Number 1, no concurrent teaching, period. It's easy to say. It's just going to be harder to pull off altogether, but that's what I've heard from many people, and that's what I believe, as well as other board members. Number 2, the option for students to have full participation in fall sports and other extracurricular activities. That was in the plan, but I wanted to re-emphasize that and add extracurricular activities. That's one of the great things about our schools, and it draws students. Number 3, professional development for staff and culturally relevant, anti-racist, social emotional teaching strategies, and school-based sharing and planning on social emotional learning and practices. So it's both the professional development and encouraging the schools. And I know a lot of schools do this. It's about building relationships with students and parents. It's about asking students what their needs are, as was referenced by a couple of our members. And so that will be key. I'll just also just parent, this is not in the motion, but we did hire in our budget more guidance counselors, social workers, nurses, psychologists, and restorative practice coaches. And I appreciate the fact that the administration has talked about a rigorous recruitment campaign, but I want to extend it to all listening, the whole listening audience. If you know people that will fit those bills, please have them contact MPS, because if us funding a position doesn't mean squat unless we find somebody to fill it. Okay, so that's not in the resolution, the squat part.
No.
Okay, 4, adherence to CDC recommendations, such as a 3-foot distancing between students and no mask requirement when students are outside, with the understanding that such recommendations might change based on local CDC conditions or local CDC guidance. Again, it's going to provide us flexibility. Number 5, continuation and expansion of efforts with community partners to encourage vaccination of eligible students, staff, and families. So we'll continue that. I would say, parenthetically, we're open to all creative ideas, like Director O'Halloran talked about scholarships. I'd love somebody to convince our governor or state legislature to do something like they did in Ohio. All creative ideas. Number 6, again, this is sort of emphasizing it's in the plan, a return to school district-wide social media launch to include both print and person-to-person marketing campaigns, encouraging each school to focus on increasing school enrollment, including at least one open house. And I understand that we're all behind that. And absolutely believe that what Vice President Taylor talks about, the door-to-door, is essential. And I know we've done it in the past. I know the union's done it in the past, and let's get it together. Okay. Number 7, creation of a standalone K-12 virtual option for families with limited enrollment that requires proactive registration by June 21st, 2021, to allow for informed decision-making relative to the overall return to school planning. Now, we all acknowledge that creating a standalone K-12 virtual option is going to be difficult. It's going to be more difficult if we have no clue about who's interested in that. And our next time that we're going to get together as a full board to discuss this will be at our full board meeting on June 24th. And so having some information back to us by the 21st will be really helpful. In fact, I think it's necessary. And I know some people might say, well, what will the virtual, what will it look like? How can I decide virtual or in person? My message would be in person will be better. In person will have all access to sports, extracurricular activities, art, music, FIAD, whatever. And the virtual will be more limited. And we encourage you to come back to be in person. Number 8, and this deals with communication. The issuance of a request for proposal, it's RFP it's called, to obtain the services of public relations firm to assist MPS in developing a strategic plan for improving our public relations and marketing efforts. This is not a criticism of our current marketing efforts. It is, and I know the board recognized by allocating more money to hire more people to work with communication, PR, and marketing. But we also know, and I think hopefully people are in agreement that to really have some experts come in, not permanently, but on a short-term basis, to help us develop a strategic plan to improve qualitatively what we do in messaging, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, if I'm not mistaken, the last item, continuation of the Road to Readiness work group meetings and expansion of the work groups when necessary to get professional advice. This should include a meet and confer sessions, I'll put that in plural, with MPS unions, with report back to the board that includes a written plan containing details of our June 1st, that's today, presentation made to the board, and any additional recommendations, such as the role of COVID-19 testing, protocols for contact tracing, quarantining of students and staff, details on the virtual component, like figuring out staffing, duration of virtual learning, protocol for virtual students to return to face-to-face, the use of plexiglass barriers, which is controversial, and other matters concerning a safe return to school. I believe that if we pass this motion and let parents know the direction that we're going, at the same time, let people know that we're not jumping to immediate decisions on some controversial issues, we'll place ourselves in a good position for our meeting on June 24th when we come back and make some more hard decisions.
Are you removing approval of that motion, Director Peterson?
Yes, I move the approval of that motion.
Madam Secretary, do we need a second?
Madam Chair, yes, you do need a second on this motion.
Director Gogo Gandhi's hand up. Is that for a second?
Sure, I second the motion.
So noted.
Thank you. So Director Peterson has put the motion on the floor. I will not read back those 9 things that he stated, and it has been seconded by Director Gogo Gandhi.
Vice President Taylor, yes. I have a quick question. Are we allowed to ask to make amendments to this motion or add things? Can you please explain that process?
Yeah, I would like to say after the motion and then the second thing, we can start and have hands develop on comments or questions pertaining to the motion that is on the floor, Director.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing that I saw Director Gokul Gandhi's hand go up, I saw Director Carr's, and I believe Director Herndon's. So I will call you all in that order. Director Gokul Gandhi, and then Director O'Halloran.
Sure. Vice President Taylor, I was wondering if President Peterson would consider a point to be added specifically around student voice and making sure that we have some, and I don't know if that falls under the communications or, community partners, but I just think there needs to be something in here that specifically relates to students, mental health, needs assessment, and culture survey. So I would pose that question to President Peterson.
Director Peterson, do you accept that or consider that? And
I would accept it. Obviously, what we need is some explicit language. I mean, there's two sort of aspects to that. One is try to draw on the student voice in the next 3 weeks, as one of the groups that gives us ideas in terms of how to move forward. And then the other is a much more long-term concern that has been raised about institutionalizing student voice and the access to needs and stuff. So I'd be happy to do that. But why don't we continue? And, at some point we might want to even take a break and get some language. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
Director Gokul Gandhi, he said he will accept that, but would like to have more of the language so that we know exactly what wording.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Members of the board, in hearing the conversation, I am just wondering if this language would actually go in point number 9. The second sentence in point number 9, which reads, this should include meet and confer sessions with MPS unions with a report to come back to the board that includes a written plan containing details of the June 1st, 2021 presentation made to the board. And at that point, you could add inclusive of student voice. Does that, I cannot see.
Yeah. Dr. Mann.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Are you?
That's okay. Yes, Director.
I apologize.
No, you're fine. We're going to get it together tonight. Don't worry.
Okay. Vice President Taylor, yes. That works for me.
Great. If the motion maker would accept, we could add that language.
Do we accept that language?
Absolutely. Thank you.
So noted.
Thank you. Next, it was Director Carr.
Thank you. I wanted to add to parameter number 9 that we include other interested stakeholder groups in addition to the MPS unions, like small business partners. I think of like City Year, SSNC, Silver Spring Neighborhood Center, Urban Underground, like other community entities that are on the grounds doing the actual work as well. Can we add in there those other interested stakeholder groups? That's the first question.
So the motion, are you accepting of adding other interest stakeholder groups?
Yeah, yes, but I would suggest we just leave it at that and not try to list them, because otherwise we're going to not list some of them. And I'll also just say that we're talking about a short turnaround, so I think we should put out an invitation to those stakeholder groups, but it's also be clear in terms of what kind of advice would be helpful to us. But let's include what Director Carr has suggested, and maybe maybe our secretary, Madam Secretary, can make those words exact.
Absolutely. Madam Clerk, I believe what they were saying was other interested stakeholder groups. Would that be following behind the inclusive of student voices?
Madam Chair, members of the board, if I'm understanding the conversation correctly, the second sentence in number 9, point number 9 would now read, this should include meet and confer sessions with MPS unions and other interested stakeholder groups.
Yes. Are we
with a report to come back to the board that includes a written plan containing details of the June 1st, 2021 presentation made to the board, inclusive of student voice.
okay? President Peterson and Director Carr, does that sound correct for the additions that you guys are trying to add? President Peterson?
I think it does. It's a little awkward, but I think we have the essence of it is we want input from stakeholder groups. Whether we put it in one sentence or another, it's clear to all of us, I think. So sounds good to me. And
thank you both for that. I
have another question. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. Director Carr, follow up. Sorry.
Clarification for parameter number 5, the continuation and expansion of efforts with community partners to encourage vaccination of eligible student, staff, and families. Is that where we're specifically pushing for incentivizing the vaccination, or are we still trying to determine what that looks like? Just for clarity.
Okay. President Peterson, on clarification of number 5.
Yes, it is. I think we're open to all suggestions. I know some of us know community partners, some of us know small businesses, some of us know older people. To the degree anybody can reach out and encourage them to work with us, or at least in tandem to do this kind of increase of vaccination. I don't think we have to be specific. I think we should just define that as very broad, open, and it includes incentivizing ideas as well. Yes.
Okay.
Director Carr, does that answer your question for number 5?
I'm sorry, I have a couple more. I swear, I'm trying to make it short.
Okay. And I'm gonna give you one more, only because I see like the hands going, and then I'll come back and give you a roundabout.
Yeah, no, and you can come back to me later. It's not anything pressing. I can let others go.
Yeah, and I'll come back to you. That's for
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Harden.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I prefer to stick with the initial premise of this, which is just a guideline, not that we were to rewrite it, leave it these items open so that we can get the feedback from the community. So I declined.
Thank you, Director Harden. I believe next is Director Halloran, Director Garcia, and then followed by Director Simpson. In that order, please.
Thank you, Vice President Taylor. For number 3, I just wanted to, I definitely support it. I wanted to point out that I believe we are supposed to be getting a plan brought before the PACE committee on Tuesday of next week. And so hopefully that plan would be inclusive, it would speak to this. That was brought forward at the PACE committee it was requested at the PACE committee last month. And so I'm hoping, we haven't had the pre-PACE meeting yet, but I'm hoping that we would have the plan that was already supposed to be presented then, and that it could kind of speak to some of the strategies that are requested of this in this motion.
Okay, for Director Halloran, are you asking that of administration? Is it on there, or you're just aligning it to what number 3 is stating?
I guess, yeah. Can we confirm that that is intended to come forward in PACE this month, please?
Thank you. Administration.
Vice President Taylor and members of the board, yes, we do have a plan that's coming this month. However, in that particular plan, that plan does not address social and emotional learning per se. So, but it is addressing the culturally responsive and anti-racist and anti-bias teaching.
Thank you, Director O'Halloran.
That would, no, I don't really have follow up. Just like that would be fine, and we can,
Yep.
it's a work in
Move on.
progress.
Thank you. And I know we're asking questions because this is lengthy, but also making sure that it's just aligning with these 9 things, because then I think we'll kind of get off into other things. That's usually me too. Director Garcia.
Yes, so I'm not sure if this is I guess clarification on whether or not that would lead into a friendly amendment for point 6 in regards to the district-wide social media launch, as well as the print and in person-to-person marketing campaigns. I'm wondering if we should here just have language around, the relevant languages that we're going to do, just so that it can be, stated in here that it's not just in English. And I don't necessarily think that we need to list every single language that we use, but just some language around, just the relevant languages that will be included in these campaigns.
All right. President Peterson.
I think that's an excellent idea. Perhaps Madam Secretary can figure out a way to say that just in one sentence, like Director Garcia suggested.
Madam Secretary, did you get that?
I did. Thank you. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, members of the board. So, yes, I will come up with language so that when this is read back, it will be included.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Director Garcia, any follow-up, or was that it? That's good. Thank you. Director Simpson.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I was just, or Vice President, sorry. Just wondering what, in number 9, when it says that the report to come back to the board, do we need to say on June 24th to put a date in there? I'm assuming that's when we would like some kind of report to come back to us.
President Peterson, was that your notion with this motion?
That's my intention. But maybe the board secretary can tell us if it's necessary to put that in or if it's just implied, but I'm happy to put it in.
Madam Secretary.
Madam Chair, members of the board, yes, we can definitely add the June 20, that this plan comes back to the board within the June board cycle. Is that helpful, or are you specifically asking that the report come back at the June 24th meeting?
Or Director Simpson, just to make sure that we're clear, and then back to President Peterson, are you asking in reference for June 24th when we meet as a whole board again?
That was just my assumption of when we would discuss this again, but I would defer to President Peterson.
President Peterson.
Let's put down June 24th. I just have to say that there is a possibility we'll have another board meeting about budget issues, depending on reality, before then. But let's keep this June 24th. Let's put that in.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that is specifically why I asked for if it would be okay to put it in the June board cycle to give the board an option of either hearing the plan sooner or by the 24th. So we could put no later than the June 24th board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I am glitching out. Computer just glitched all the way out.
Oh.
Yes. So thank God that we're here. Madam Secretary, from the last thing I heard, you said you received that and you were giving us the option to say for the June 24th or before. President Peterson, did you stand strongly on any one of them dates, or were you open to just the June date?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Madam.
Members of the board, the languaging that was agreed to is no later than the June 24th regular board meeting.
All right, thank you. Any other board directors have any comments or questions on this motion? Director Herndon and then Director Carr.
I'm sorry, I was not signaling you.
Oh, thank you. Director
Madam
Carr.
Chair,
Yes.
If given that your computer is glitching and Director Peterson is not making any additional statements as of yet, you could pass the gavel back, and then just so that there can be, I believe you were at Director Garcia's station.
I am, yes.
And so that we can get you back online.
Thank you very much. It was still on Director Carr, but as I am turning it to Director Carr to be able to speak, I am passing the gavel back to President Peterson.
So noted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Carr.
I don't know if this is appropriate now, or maybe this is a later discussion, but I had questions regarding the funding for point number 5. Is that now, or should we table that for later, or is that a later discussion? I had questions about funding and the legal liability that could potentially create a problem or not. I just have a lot more questions. Should I wait till later, or how does this, I'm sorry, how does this go?
I suggest just why don't you ask your question, and if it's too complicated, we'll definitely push it to later.
Okay. So my first question was, is this coming from the ESSER funding? And does this support this type of incentive, or are we able to fund an incentive for this from ESSER funding, or where will this be coming from?
Okay, I'll ask the administration. This is obviously hypothetical because we haven't decided on anything. But the question is, would this be something that could be funded with ESSER 3? Administration.
President Peterson and members of the board, that is a question that I don't feel that we are able to answer tonight. I could check Martha. Is there anything different, new that you know that I don't? For our understanding, we don't have that answer tonight. That'll be an answer we would need to get back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Director Carr, anything else?
Last one. If we are going to, you know what? I'll wait. It's not appropriate. I'll wait.
Okay.
I'll wait until later. Yep.
Okay. Do I see any other, Director O'Halloran, do you have your hand up?
Thank you. I think under point 5, it is not necessarily talking specifically about incentivization at this point. A continuation and expansion of efforts with community partners could just be the way that we're hosting sites right now for students and families and communities to walk in. So I don't think it's necessarily we have a plan before us that we're talking about allocating budget. I think it's just the idea that we know that this is how we get people back into schools is in a very safe way is encouraging vaccination. So I just wanted to, I know this is not, I am not the maker of the motion, but at least that's how I am interpreting it. And I would leave the door open that if it is allowable under ESSER 3, that we think creatively about how we can incentivize this. I would certainly love to see the governor take up this, mantle the way Ohio has, but in the absence of that, is there some flexibility that we would be able to do something at the school level, given that we do have ESSER funds? But at this point, I don't think that's what we're considering. So I just wanted to clarify that, at least how I'm interpreting it.
Right. You interpreted it correctly according to the maker of the motion. Any other comments from any board member? I don't see everybody in my little queue here. Okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary, could you perhaps read back any of the parts that have been amended?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Does the administration have anything to add? I have one section that I need to.
Yeah, what is the administration's perspective on this motion?
President Peterson and members of the board, thank you. We've had an opportunity to read through. At this time, we have no further questions.
Thank you very much. We'll just wait a moment for Madam Secretary to finishing your editing on the fly, which we appreciate.
Okay.
Madam
Okay,
Secretary, yes.
Mr. Chair. So the motion that I have before me is by President Peterson, seconded by Director Gokul Gandhi, and that is to approve the administration's recommendation and further direct that the administration to proceed with planning and implementation for a full in-person, face-to-face, 5 days a week return to school for students for both August and September start dates, and that the planning and the implementation should start immediately and include, at a minimum, the following parameters. Number 1, no concurrent teaching. 2, the option for students to have full participation in fall sports and other extracurricular activities. And 3, professional development for staff in culturally relevant anti-racist social emotional teaching strategies and school-based sharing and planning on social emotional learning and practices. And 4, adherence to the CDC recommendations such as a 3-foot distancing between students and no mask requirements when students are outside, with the understanding that such recommendations might change based on local and CDC guidance. Continuation, number 5, continuation and expansion of efforts with community partners to encourage vaccination of eligible students, staff, and families. 6, a return to school district-wide social media launch to include both print and person-to-person marketing campaigns, inclusive of information interpretations of languages of MPS families, encouraging each school to focus on increasing school enrollment, including at least one open house. Number 7, creation of a standalone K-12 virtual option for families with a limited enrollment that requires proactive registration by June 21st, 2021, to allow for informed decision-making relative to the overall return to school planning. Number 8, issuance of an RFP to obtain the services of a public relations firm to assist MPS in developing a strategic plan for improving our public relations and marketing efforts. And the section most altered, number 9, continuation of the road to readiness with work group meetings and starting over, continuation of the Road to Readiness work group meetings and expansion of the work groups when necessary to get additional professional advice. This should include meet and confer sessions with MPS unions and other interested stakeholder groups with a report to come back to the board no later than the June 24th, 2021 board meeting, and any additional recommendations that such as the role of the COVID-19 testing, protocols for contact tracing, quarantining of students and staff, details on a virtual component, staffing, duration of virtual learning, and protocols for virtual students to return to face-to-face instruction. And I skipped a line.
Right.
Let me go back to sentence number 2 should read, this should include meet and confer sessions with MPS unions and other interested stakeholder groups with a report to come back to the board no later than the June 24th, 2021 board meeting. And that includes a written plan containing details of the June 1st, 2021 presentation made to the board, inclusive of student voice, and any additional recommendations such as the role of the COVID-19 testing, protocols for contact tracing, quarantining of students and staff, details on a virtual component, staffing duration of virtual learning, and protocols for virtual students to return to face-to-face instruction, use of plexiglass barriers, and other matters concerning a safe return to school. Hopefully I've caught all of the additions. And given that some of the conversation happened and during the go round, I just want to be sure that the seconder of the motion, Director Gokul Gandhi, is okay with the additions to the motion.
She gave a thumbs up. Yes, she is. Thank you.
I can't see her for some reason. Let me go to my gallery view.
Yep, I'm okay with it, Dr. Mann.
So noted. Okay.
Great. Call the roll, please.
On the motion as read into the record. The motion by President Peterson, seconded by Director Gokul Gandhi. Director Carr.
In understanding that this is a working document, I support.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Taylor. I'm sorry, Vice President Taylor.
Aye. Nay. Aye.
Thank you. And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Mr. Chair, that was the last item on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. You know, before we leave tonight's meeting, I'd like to thank all the board members for being board members, but also for signing a statement by the Milwaukee Schools board members on the actions of the Wisconsin Joint Finance Committee that is available in English and Spanish. I believe it's available, or it will be available on the web. Maybe, Madam Secretary, can you confirm that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, it should be posted.
Okay. And I just want to thank people. Hopefully people will read that and continue our very important efforts and the efforts of many people around the state to get adequate funding for our students. So with that, there being no further business, Madam Secretary.
You do have Director Taylor and Director Simpson who would like to speak.
Director Taylor.
Thank you. I didn't get to say this earlier with the glitch. I just wanted to say congratulations to all of the schools in the Thriving Third that had graduation tonight or those that are completing. Definitely shouts out to Rufus King. My namesake graduated from high school today, Saquana and Amira. So thank you for that.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.